You're listening to The Invisible Addiction, investigating problem gambling in the UK 2020. I recently shared my own experience with problem gambling. Lots of people got in touch wanting to find out more. When did gambling go from being fun to a problem? Where did you get help? How did you recover? So the aim is to provide you with more information about problem gambling and to highlight the effects of addiction to younger people. In this podcast series, I'll be speaking to a number of guests to hear their perspective on this highly emotive and often taboo subject. Problem gambling, after all, is the invisible addiction. In this episode, I speak with a former Premier League footballer about his struggles with gambling. I wanted to find out a bit more about his story. When did he get into betting? How did his addiction affect others around him? What help did he get? Today's guest has notched over 300 career appearances for West Ham Football Club, including an FA Cup semi-final appearance, 2 League Cup semi-final appearances and 1 promotion to the top flight with the Hammers. He's captained both Birmingham City and Brighton and Hove Albion football clubs, as well as representing England at youth level. Since settling in West Sussex, he's carved out a successful football coaching career, most notably with Brighton and Hove Albion ladies. It gives me great pleasure and great honour to introduce the one, the only, Mr. George Parris. How you doing, George? You all right?
Yeah, fine. Hi, good morning. Yeah, it's a lovely day here in sunny Worthing. So yes, enjoying life as much as I can.
No, thanks for giving up your time for today to do this interview. I just wondered if we could perhaps start by asking you about your background and your upbringing, really.
Okay, yeah. So I was born in Barking. So some people think I'm Barking mad, but but I was born in Barking, and we lived in Goodmays in Essex. So I was the youngest of 4. So I've got 2 brothers and a sister. So yeah, that was, as I say, went to school in Goodmays. My mum and dad actually got divorced when I was reasonably young. So I lived with my mum in Goodmays. And yeah, from a young age, I was always had a ball by my side, whether it be football or cricket. I like both sports, to be honest. And yeah, I just thought that I never thought I was going to be a footballer, if I'll be honest. It was one of them but I enjoyed playing sports, going out with my friends, staying over in the park, and until all the hours of the park used to shut sometimes, and we'd be still there playing football. So we had to jump over the fence, and that was quite funny. I'm not sure they would do that in this day and age, but we certainly did that then. And yeah, I suppose my career progressed from there. So I played football, cricket, both for my district, which was Redbridge, and when I was 11, I played for my county, Essex, but I didn't play for my county at cricket. So I was a bit peeved by that, really, because I thought I was quite a decent cricketer at the time. But so in a way, I'm glad that happened, because it made my path easier, that possibly I progressed to do into football. So football was going really well. Had obviously the support of my family, etc. So that was great. And then I think sort of like 12, 13 at that stage, there was always scouts around watching football matches, even at district level. So West Ham were watching. They watched X amount of games, and then they invited me to go along for training. But to be fair, I was one of the last in my particular district and county side to get asked to go to a pro club, because many of the players were already at local clubs like West Ham and Orient and Southend. So possibly I was a late developer or not, I don't know. But so I started at West Ham when I was 13 as a associated schoolboy, what was the term back then.
Right.
So we used to train twice a week. So we used to train on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening. And back in those days, we only used to play during school holidays. Whereas now, obviously, the academy setup is completely different.
Yeah, of course. And it says here you represented England schoolboys as well, under 15s. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So that was 1980. I always remember the year because it was actually the same year that my cousin, who was Roland Butcher, who was a professional cricketer who played for Middlesex, he was involved in the England setup that went to the West Indies in 1980. So so during that season I played 8 games. Scored three goals. So back then I was an attacking midfield player.
Right.
Scored 3 goals. Scored a goal at Berlin Stadium in Germany. So in front of 90 odd thousand, which was great. But at the time, didn't think too much of it because it was just playing football. But now looking back at thinking about the actual stadium and the actual arena, fantastic experience. Lucky enough, played twice at Wembley, the old Wembley, and we played in I don't know if you know, but we played in quite a famous game where we got beat 5-4 by Scotland, and there was a lot of decent talent on there that went on to make good pro careers.
Wow! No, I didn't know that. I mean, who are we talking? Can we mention any names?
So thinking back from the England side, we had a centre forward, Paul Rideout.
Okay.
He played for Southampton and then went to Italy, played for Bari and possibly came back and then played for Aston Villa. So he had quite a good career. And I think a couple of Scottish players, they had Ali Dick, who went on to play for Spurs, and I was attempting to mark Paul McStay.
Okay.
Who had a glittering career at Celtic. So there was quite a lot of talent that went on to make a professional career. And also a good friend of mine, Warren Donald, who played in midfield. He played for us at West Ham and as well. So yeah,
fantastic. And so then you then signed as an apprentice at West Ham.
Yes, so signed straight from school. So I think it was July '81 that I signed for West Ham, which was fantastic achievement, and I really enjoyed what I did there. And it was then a case of getting used to going out and into the big wide world and working. So it was a very big shock to the system. Obviously, from going from training twice a week to then suddenly training every day, sometimes twice a day, and then pre-season training. Not only doing the training, but then when we finished training in the morning, we would have to sort out the professionals' kit and clean people's boots, etc., and then go back out and train in the afternoon. So I can always remember my first pre-season. Used to get the bus to work. Got home, had a little bite to eat, and was possibly in bed by about 6 o'clock, 6:30. So it took a few weeks to get used to that regime. Yeah.
No, I'm sure. And then you made your debut, and you made your debut against Liverpool. I mean, that must have been for a local lad playing for West Ham, your local side, having started, at 13 at West Ham, to make your debut against Liverpool. That must have been, out of this world, really.
Oh yeah, great. I mean, to be fair, I didn't actually know I was playing until an hour before the game, so I didn't really have enough time to be nervous, etc. And back in those days, Liverpool were the force. We got beat 3-0 up. I thought actually I had quite a good debut. Could have been worse. We could have got beat a few more, but I really enjoyed it, and it was fantastic to be out there playing against some great players, both on us. For our team and obviously against.
No, fantastic. So, so George, obviously today's conversation it's related to gambling and problem gambling and such like. So I hope you don't mind, but if we can maybe swerve the conversation a little bit about problem gambling and things like that. I've got a list of questions that I would like to perhaps cover. So I just wondered, like for you, perhaps you could just spend a moment sort of talking about when you started gambling or betting and maybe how you got into it.
Okay, so I suppose this gambling maybe was a reasonably young age. So when we used to have sleepovers with my friends, my schoolmates, etc., we always used to play cards at each other's houses. So I suppose that possibly may have been the start of the actual gambling, as in pennies and 5p's, etc. But at that stage, it wasn't a problem. You know, that we used to do it. We only used to do it X amount of time, and that was it. So perhaps that was possibly the start of it. Who knows? But yeah, throughout my younger years, I then, as I say, we used to have sleepovers and play, and then even when during football, and we used to go on tours or trips away, we used to play cards on the coach or when we were in our own hotel rooms, etc. So yeah, I suppose it wasn't a problem because I had the money to do it then, and as I say, it wasn't great stakes, but perhaps the seed was sown from there.
Sure. And we'll obviously we'll sort of meander in and out of your football career, I'm sure. So as well as obviously talking about the betting and things like that. So you mentioned that it was about like cards and stuff like that. I mean, what sort of types of betting have you done? Obviously you started with the cards. Did it progress on to other types of betting?
Yeah, so as I say, started with cards, and that was playing throughout my career, as I say, on the coaches for away games. And then I suppose when I got to the age of 19, 20, I then started to go in betting shops and bet on primarily the horses and the dogs. And then, as I say, when we're at West Ham, for example, there used to be occasions where we used to get tips, like the older players would get tips from different people, sources in relation to a particular horse running. So majority of the players would have a bet again to their own monetary value, if you like. So I would do that myself. And then I found that I was then having the problem that not only was I betting on those particular tips, I was betting on other things as well. So I found that I was spending more and more time in the betting office.
Sure. And when you were spending more time in the betting office, was that after training, or did you develop a pattern of when you would go to the bookies?
Normally it was after training, yeah. So whether I would, this is the point of life when I was single, so I would go there after training, not every afternoon, but majority afternoons. And then that trend continued when I got married for the first time. So there'd be afternoons that I would then go to the betting shop while my wife was at home, or if she was out at work all day, I would go there for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon and then come home. So I was then developing a pattern.
Okay, so it sounds like it sort of moved from becoming a bit of fun, and then it sort of started to creep into maybe becoming a bit more of a problem. Did you at the time realise that maybe it was becoming a problem, or was it like this gradual slippery slope?
Most probably a gradual slippery slope. I think I didn't feel that I had a problem because I had the money, really, to be honest, at that stage. And as I say, when I was single, I had no ties. And even when we got married, because my wife was working, there was always good income coming in, both from myself as a footballer and from her in her job. So yeah, I didn't class it as being a problem at that stage.
No, of course. So I'm just looking at the timeline as well, obviously during your career and stuff. So, so it sounds like you were having a really good time, really good spell with West Ham. You were making lots of appearances. You reached the League Cup final, semi-finals, 2 seasons on the trot as well. So you were having a lot of success, or good seasons with West Ham. I suppose, were you riding the crest of that wave? Did you feel maybe what's the word, invincible maybe, or I don't know.
And I wouldn't class myself as being invincible. I just at that stage I enjoyed. I suppose I enjoyed the thrill of playing. As I say, when we used to play on the coach for away games, we used to play 3-card brag, sometimes poker, etc. So there was that buzz that I would like to win because you get more money. So that was the thought of that stage. To be fair.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you've seen it, but Michael Jordan's got a documentary on Netflix about the Chicago Bulls and how their success during the 80s and the 90s. But there's an episode where they talk about the gambling, and he liked to bet on like games of golf, and also like on the plane and playing cards like you've mentioned and stuff. But when he got asked was it a problem, he didn't say it was a problem. He was just like addicted to winning. So I just wondered maybe if it was that, as I say, that competitiveness of wanting to win.
Yeah, it might well have been. Yeah, and I say that at that period of time I wasn't always winning, so it was going and, let's say, the betting shop, going for a couple of hours. Hopefully the plan was to come out winning, but that wasn't necessarily the case. So, and I think at that stage it wasn't even a case of, okay, I'm going to go back the following day to chase my money. So, hence the reason why I didn't think at that stage I had a problem.
Okay, and when you were at the bookies, you said you sort of the greyhounds, the horses. I mean, did you really get into it? Did you study the form, or was it almost like an impulsive bet, like, oh, that looks good, I'll just bet on that?
I think initially I was into the form, so looking at form and saying, well, by rights, looking at form, this horse has got a great chance of winning today, or this dog, etc. And I think as time went on, that most probably changed. So hence, that's when it maybe came into the realms of being a problem, that I was then not looking at form, etc., and then betting willy-nilly on possibly every race that was going.
Sure. I mean, I don't know if this is something you're comfortable talking about, and if you are uncomfortable, please let me know, and we can, you don't have to answer. But I just wondered, maybe you could touch on like how much were you betting? Was it big amounts at that time, or was it creeping up?
I think at that stage, my biggest bet was I only used to put on. I used to put on £20, whether it be a dog or a horse. And I think majority of the time throughout my problem years, and then later on when it really got really, really bad, I didn't really bet. There was occasional of maybe £100 per race or dog, but that was later on into when I was into my chronic gambling, if you like.
Sure. No, thanks for sharing that. We'll probably come on to that in a moment. So if we pick up the story from the football career, so it looks like you've had some really good seasons with West Ham. As I say, you've got to the semi-finals of the League Cup. But then it looks like injury struck a little bit, and then you had maybe some time out from the game through injury problems and stuff. So did you find that you maybe gambled more then, or did you find that you were gambling more then?
Possibly not, because there was there was the urge to get back into training. So I know that there was a period when I had my double knee operation around the Christmas time. I can't remember exact year, but so just when I tried to get back from that, there was the urge to get back on the training pitch and ultimately play games. So at that stage, I was training really, really hard, twice a day most of the time, because I had to try and get mobility back into my knee. So that possibly that little period of time, I wasn't betting as much as I had done previously. And then I think getting back from that particular operation, I think my first game for the first team, I came on sub, and just leading up to that, prior side, what was happening when I came back from my knee operation, when I then started training, I was getting a slight pain in my chest, which wouldn't last long, but it was only at the beginning of some training sessions. It would only last, I don't know, 5-10 seconds max. And then, as I say, by the time I played one reserve team game and I was deemed fit to sit on the bench against Arsenal, it was at home. And then I came on as in the second half. We were losing, and I can remember running during the game. I wasn't on that long, and I had a feeling in my head that actually I felt that I was running too fast. Although I was never a quick player, by the way, but I felt that I was running too fast. So there was a thought to try and slow down, but unbeknown to me, I just then killed over in the middle of the pitch with no one around me. So that was, I didn't really know what was going on, to be honest. So I think that was obviously more worrying for other people and my wife who was watching, and friends who were watching. So physio came on and asked some questions, and I think my speech was a bit slurred, but I can remember where we were. I remember cracking a joke, are we still losing? I think it was 1-0 at the time. But yeah, I couldn't carry on. They took me off, and then I had to have all the tests done, etc. And when I had the initial test, had an angiograph, and they stick a tube up your groin and into your heart to test it. That didn't go through, so they had to put me on tablets, and I couldn't do any physical exercise. So I was really, really gutted the fact that I'd only just got back fit again from the operation that I had the Christmas before. So, and I think at that stage I was getting married as well. So yeah, that was a worrying period of time. But luckily I got the all clear when I came back again, and I was able to start pre-season training, but it was meant to be a reduced rate. But I don't know how, but I think I actually started that particular season. I played the first game, so yeah.
Yeah. back on the mend. It's, I mean, to get back from a heart problem or chest pain and stuff, that's not many people overcome that. So no, that's great. I mean, so then again, if we look at your career, perhaps you then moved after. How many seasons was it? Was it one season or 2 seasons? And then it looked like you moved on to Birmingham as well.
Yeah. So so I think after that particular season, so it would have been I think the 92-93 season. I was in and out of the side at that stage, and my contract was up July 93, and back in those days the transfer deadline was in and around March time. So yeah, the Birmingham move came out of the blue. So I was training at West Ham on I think it was the Thursday morning after training. Billy Bonds, who was then the manager, called me in and said, "Oh, actually, Birmingham are interested in signing you." He said he didn't want me to go, but he said it obviously is in your best interest to go up there and talk to them, see what they've got to offer, and then if it's not for you, then come back and you'll still be part of the squad, etc. So went home, packed an overnight bag, and then off I went up to Birmingham. So, but I think one of the possible reasons why I ended up signing for them as well was because of the deal that I eventually got with them, and the fact that I think at that stage I was heavily into my gambling as well. So the thought was, oh, by signing for Birmingham, I'll be able to get a signing on fee, etc., which would fund my gambling. So I would think that ultimately, looking back, that was the deciding factor. Although the actual deal, I ended up getting more money at Birmingham than I was at West Ham anyway. But yeah, so the following day, the Friday, I signed before 12 o'clock, and I played for Birmingham that Saturday. So the actual move happened really, really quick. And also, I think during that period of time, because I'd been at West Ham for 12 years, I was in the middle of a testimonial year.
Right.
So yeah, everything happened really, really quick.
I can imagine. And so you said that you moved to Birmingham, and it sounds like, you know, you were heavily into gambling at that point. Am I right in saying that perhaps at the time you might have had some debts there to carry across, or was it just the fact of you just trying to plug some holes at that time?
Yeah, mate, I didn't have any debts at that stage. So I was always well paid as a footballer when I was at West Ham and at Birmingham and at Brighton, to be fair, later on. So at that stage, I didn't have any debts.
No.
So then I suppose the slide happened really, really quite quick and quite severe from there on in.
So perhaps, I don't know if you're comfortable to talk about the slide that you mentioned. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about how that happened and maybe that decline, I suppose.
Yeah, I think at that stage, as I say, the move to Birmingham. As I say, I was getting more money. We moved into a bigger house. We moved to Solihull. So yeah, although I was getting more money, I think the urge to go out and gamble more, you know, that sort of thing. And I think that period of time, the gambling I was doing, I wasn't winning as much as I would have liked to have won. And yeah, the gambling was then starting to get out of control.
Definitely. I mean, was it kind of like, again, was it mostly going to the bookies? Because I suppose at this point, could you telephone in bets, or was it again mostly going to the bookies and stuff?
Yeah, my betting at that stage was always going to the betting shop. So I didn't have I know nowadays you can just press a button and you can gamble, but back in those days when I was betting, it was like physically going to the betting shop. And I think obviously at that stage we had our first child, Elliot, who you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then Harriet was due 95. So around that sort of stage, I was betting quite heavily, and there was even periods of time. I think that when Harriet came about, that I would then have the kids in the car, and I would go into a betting shop in Birmingham and have a bet while the kids were asleep in the car. So, which I'm not proud of, but yeah, that was some of the things I was doing in that period of time.
No, sure. No, it's funny what you can do during these times of almost kind of with your blinkers on, your blindness. You know, I've certainly been there, George, and done some things that I'm not very proud of as well. And was it something, as I say, was it? It sounds like it was then obviously a problem, an addiction. So do you think it was that physical addiction? Because science is sort of proved with the dopamine levels that that problem gamblers you get sucked into it, and whether you're winning or you're losing, you are addicted to it. So do you think it was like a physical addiction or the mental addiction, or?
Mostly a bit of both, I think. As I say, that at that stage, even though I was going to training, etc., my thoughts were, I'll finish training as quick as possible and get into the betting shop. Not even to go home first to see the wife and kids, and then go to the betting shop. The thoughts was, oh well, let me go to the betting shop on the way back from training, and then take it from there.
Was it again? Was it kind of like I've got to chase my money, or was it again? Was it just the thrill of winning, or I'm just interested to kind of get in your sort of psyche there of what it felt like or what it was about.
I think at that stage it was chasing the money really. At that stage,
yeah.
So I think the thrill of actually gambling had gone, and it was, well, I need to start winning to get back the money that I was losing.
Yeah.
That definitely changed. That for me anyway, personally. I don't know for other people, but that was the change in my thought pattern.
Okay. And so during this time of after Birmingham, you then via, I think, am I correct in saying via Sweden, you moved then permanently to Brighton?
Yeah. So what happened? My contract finished at Birmingham, so I was going to be I was a free transfer. So during that little period of time, I went to Sweden because their season was a little bit different. So I went out there for, I think it was about 6 weeks or so. Again, I suppose that even though it was a short-term contract, again, I was well paid during that period of time, but the thoughts were, the move enhanced a better chance of me getting more money to still gamble. So although the family didn't come out with me straight away, I was, even over there, I was trying to find a place that I was able to have a bet.
Really? Yeah. Mm. And what do you think, again, was it to do with maybe the fact that, as a footballer, you maybe got a bit more time on your hands to bet as well? Do you think that maybe, am I right in saying maybe even a little bit of boredom or time to fill?
Well, looking back, possibly, yeah, because I now love playing golf, for example. So back in those days, it was quite a few of the players after training would go and play golf. There might have been a group of players that would then, some players would go to the local pub and have an afternoon session, for example, and there'd be one or two of us who would then go to the betting shop and spend a couple hours in there. So there was different cliques of players, if you like. I suppose, yeah, looking back, yeah, if I know now, then I certainly would have been one of those going out and playing rounds of golf. But yeah, at that stage, it didn't interest me. So I was more interested in going to the betting shop.
Okay, so then you moved to Brighton, and I forgot to mention you were captain as well at Birmingham, and made captain at Brighton as well. So you obviously held a lot of responsibility in the club amongst the players and supporters as well. With this responsibility, how did it? Sorry, George. I'm trying to get my question right. Sorry. I'll maybe rephrase that question a little bit. So, what were the downfalls, perhaps, of the gambling at this point? Did you recognise it as a problem? Did you start to seek to get help? Did people pick up on it?
Well, I think the major downfall was I was losing a shed load of money. That was the biggest factor. Yeah, it was a great honour to be, as I say, it was a great honour to be captain at Birmingham and then at Brighton. I don't think that weighed heavily on me in the fact of, it changed how I played. I like to think that I was a natural leader at that stage. So, yeah, I think that and the gambling was separate. But yeah, no, I thought at that stage no one knew about my gambling. But I'm sure that if you was to ask one or two people close to me, then they would then say, yeah, actually, I must have had a problem. And I suppose, say, the monetary side of things, one of the downfalls, as I say, from moving from Solihull, owning my own house, to then going, and then eventually when we moved to Rottingdean, we ended up renting there. So, yeah, as I say, the decline in monetary and finance was quite quick. But yeah, as I say, unbeknown to most people, I was still playing football, but I had that problem of spending too much money at gambling, and then ultimately I was doing silly things to get money to have a gamble, which is where the addiction comes into play.
Sure. I mean, it's been said that people with problem gambling, can lead to depression and anxiety and stress, but also might turn to criminal activities, or illegal pursuits, shall we say? So, I mean, can you maybe spend a moment about like how you felt like at the time of desperation, maybe?
Well, desperation. I suppose the desperation came in was, I suppose, I don't know if where I thought the shit hit the fan was, I suppose, December '96. When by that stage I'd exhausted all the funds that we had as a household, and at that stage I don't think, obviously, the loans and stuff, were credit cards, etc., were all maxed up, and that's where I had to hold my hand up, really. That was, although that was really, really hard to do, and I'm glad that I didn't at that stage. But there was thoughts of taking my own life. So, but yeah, I think luckily I didn't do that. And driving back from New Haven, I then had to confront my wife and just say, actually, look, by the way, we've got a major problem there.
Yeah.
I'm sure she must have tweaked something anyway.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can't imagine what that would have been like for you. But so from that point, did how did you get help, or from that point on, how did it pan out?
So yeah, it panned out that, well, as I say, me and my first wife, we sat down and we had to put a plan in place of how the future was going to look in relation to what money was coming in and what debts I owed, etc. And my in-laws helped us out as well during that period of time. I went to who was then manager, Steve Gritt at Brighton, and just explained that I had a problem with gambling. To be fair, at that stage, I didn't even know that I was a compulsive gambler, or although I was saying I was a compulsive gambler, I didn't truly understand what that meant. So I think for me at that stage, it was just a case of just physically stop gambling. But yeah, I think when you get to the addiction stage, there's lots of other things that you need to address, which I didn't really know at that stage. So I was able to stop gambling, but I hadn't addressed all the other problems, if you like. So I think after it was about 3.5 years, I had a relapse. So yeah, that was quite hard after getting myself back up again and starting over again, and then to then have a relapse. And I don't know if you know, but when you do have a relapse, you go back in at the rate that you finished previously. So that period of time, it was only it's like a 2-month binge, but during that 2-month binge, there was lots of devastation.
No, I can imagine. And I mean, you spoke about devastation there, George. I mean, and I guess at this point, was it affecting your friends and your family, things like that?
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah. So at that stage, a few of my friends knew, and one of my closest friends, I even borrowed money off him, or actually, I suppose technically it would be classed as fraud. He lent his credit card to me for. I explained that I needed to get some money out, which I did, but I took a lot more than he anticipated as well. So, not good moments.
No, I'm sure. I mean, it's very big of you, and you know, to talk openly about this. So I can only thank you for being so honest. Okay, so George, so how did you get help? You mentioned about being clean of gambling for 3.5 years there. How did you get help at that point?
Well, initially, the first time it was just self-help, really. There wasn't anything around or anywhere that you could go to at that stage for that help, just to say, actually, I'm a problem gambler, I need help with this particular thing. It was only after my relapse that I was able to get some help with the Sporting Chance Clinic.
I was going to say, I've heard of Sporting Chance. Is that through the PFA, the Professional Football Association?
Yes, yeah. So Sporting Chance, which was founded by Tony Adams, who obviously had a drinking addiction. So that's where sports people can go to seek help. So it was at that stage I was actually involved and helping them with some speeches, etc. We were doing 1 or 2 seminars, but during that period of time, I was just on the beginning of my relapse as well. So after I had my relapse, I went in there. I went in there for about 3 weeks,
right,
to seek help from there.
And what do they do in that 3 weeks? What sort of activities do you do?
Well, there was lots of one-to-one sessions with a counsellor. There was also some group sessions with not just compulsive gamblers, but obviously addicts and drugs, etc. So there was about two or three of us in there at any one time. Also would go to Gamblers Anonymous meetings while we were there, and just around the rest of the time was actually doing physical activity as well. So that was how it looked.
Yeah,
during a 3-week period.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I myself never actually went to Gamblers Anonymous, and I got counselling and things like that. And what's Gamblers Anonymous like? Is it just you tell your story and then you hear other stories, or?
Yeah. So to be honest, in this period of time since I've been clean again, or abstained from gambling, I don't regularly attend Gamblers Anonymous, but during that period of time, I went to Gamblers Anonymous in Hove. So the meeting would be, you would go in and you go around and say what your name was, and primarily we're all there for the same addiction or problem. And then the chair was open for anyone who would like to share whatever they wanted to share, whether they've had a good week or whether they actually wanted to talk about their particular story or anything that you particularly wanted to bring to the table. So the actual session lasted a couple of hours. We used to have an hour with a 5-10 minute break, and then we'd come back in again. So yeah, it was just a case of, and there's lots of them still out there. I suppose it's just a case of finding the right meeting for you. That's going to help you from stop gambling. I suppose. I think you get to that stage where it's an individual program, and you need to find what's best for you to ultimately to stop gambling. If that's what you want to do. Not everyone's able to abstain from gambling, and in some people's cases, they might find that having the odd bet is actually good for them as opposed to abstaining full stop. I know for me that I can't have a gamble,
really?
Whether I want or not. Yeah.
Does that go from any type of betting, even betting on cards or betting on the horses or even a football bet? You just can't do it.
No. Well, I can do it, but I know where it would lead me. So, and that's even down to obviously when you play golf and you play for holes, etc. No, I can't. I can't physically do that.
No. And I mean, have you got any advice and tips for the listeners about maybe stuff that you've done to help you not gamble and things like that?
Well, I think first and foremost, I suppose you got to try and put your hand up and say, actually, I've got a problem. I know it's really hard to do. Or hopefully if you've got loved ones around you, or you've got a fantastic network that people can say to you, actually, are you okay? Because you look like you look really depressed, or you're doing this or whatever. Then I know in my case, I had a fantastic network around me. And I was able to go to people and say, actually, by the way, just be aware I'm a compulsive gambler, or if you like to say a problem gambler, whatever your phrase is. And then just make sure that certainly in the early stages, that if those people go to horse racing or go to dogs, etc., which is natural for them, please don't invite me, or I won't be coming because I can't do it. So most of the people that are around me understand that. So the ones who didn't, I'm not really friends with now. So that's part of what I personally had to do. So ultimately it's all about yourself really, and where you're at. And I know that I think the main reason for me that so I'm at a bet for 15 years now, but I think the actual reason why that was for me was being chucked out of the house.
Right.
And obviously not being able to see my kids every morning, etc. So that was my lowest point.
Yeah, sure. Was that I guess that was the was it a wake up call, or was it?
Oh yeah, massive. Yeah. As I say, at that stage, I'd had a couple of relapses, but that was, for me anyway, that was the stage where I had to try and sort myself out. Really painful at the time, really, really painful. And but yeah, looking back, that was the best thing that could happen to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I guess there's like anyone in anyone's timeline, I feel like there's always this moment that people, the pen, I don't know, the penny drops, or whatever moment it is, whatever desperation that you're in, or whatever consequences it happens, you kind of just turn around and go, I can't do this anymore. I can't, I've got to change and stuff like that. And I guess, did you experience things like depression or stress or anxiety or lack of sleep? Did you experience these sort of things? Or?
I think you certainly, the depression side of things. I say when I got chucked out of the house, it was then a case of trying to source where. Luckily, I stayed at a friend's house for 2 or 3 months until I was able to sort myself out, and then find a flat in Ovingdean that I stayed, and really painful. And then I was then able to see my kids once a week or whatever it was. So that was the turning point for me personally.
No, of course. I mean, to have, as I say, to have a lost relationship, or to not see your kids, I can't imagine what that would have been like, George. So just to sort of think about wrapping up soon, but what is the road of recovery for you like? You said 15 years, you've not made a bet. I mean, are there times when you think about it, or are there triggers, or are there things that you do to kind of go, right, hang on, I'm thinking of this, I need to stop thinking about it? Have you finished gambling now, or what's the road of recovery like?
Well, I think initially it is that one day at a time. Initially it's just a case of doing the right thing at the right time, and there were thoughts for me initially, I want to have a bet and etc. But I think as the days go on, goes into the weeks, the months, you get stronger, and if you've got good people around you, you're able to share that with them and just say, well, actually, today I'm not having a good day. I feel like I want to have a bet. And in my case, lots of people, that's happened to me, and I've been able to ride that particular day. But for me anyway, it got easier in time. So now you know the triggers that, although I don't do it, I know that there's horse racing on the TV, and if I walked into a room and there was horse racing on, I'm able to watch it. I won't watch the whole race, but I'll be able to watch it for X amount of seconds or whatever, knowing that I want to have a bet. I know that I couldn't do that in the beginning, so it's just the strength really, that I think every day that you don't gamble, you get stronger.
Yeah, I do agree. So George, is there anything else that you would like to mention, or anything else that you want to share with the listeners, or maybe anything you want to summarise? So
I think during that period of time, obviously I've educated myself and gone on lots of courses, etc. I'm now a qualified therapeutic counsellor. So I think with the experiences that I've had, that puts me in good stead. So one of the places that I work for a charity called Breakeven, which is a counselling partner for GamCare. I don't know if you've heard of GamCare.
Yeah.
So basically, GamCare is the leading provider of free information, advice, and support for anyone affected by problem gambling. So that's a place that if you feel that you've got a problem, then certainly that's a place that you should try and source, or even what we call your affected other. So people around you that have been affected by gambling, because it's not actually just the gambler who's got the problem, it's people around them. So I don't know if that's obviously in your case as well, but certainly if you go to maybe at the end of this I can give you the website for Breakeven. But if you go to Breakeven, you'll be able to get some counselling, which is, there's no fees for our particular service there as a Breakeven counsellor. So we're funded by GamCare, who themselves are a charity, and obviously their work and stuff is dependent on outside funding and charitable gifts. So I know for me, my role as a counsellor now is to facilitate the client, whether it be a affected other or the gambler, and respect their values and any choices that they make for themselves, because it's important that they the gambler or the affected other make the choices for themselves. We're there just as a sounding board, and we'll support and encourage them, and hopefully in their path towards a gambling-free future. But as I spoke about earlier, not everyone has that path, and some may still decide, even after seeing us during a period of time, that they will continue to gamble, but as long as it doesn't affect their life.
Sure. That sounds like some fantastic work. And just for the listeners, I'll put this the website in the link in the description on YouTube. But what is the website there, George?
So it's Breakeven.
Yeah.
.org.uk.
Yeah.
And also, as I say, we mentioned about GamCare. Their website is gamcare.org.uk.
Fantastic.
And if anyone has a problem, or even if they know of someone who they feel's got a problem with gambling, certainly source those two websites.
That's brilliant. Well, George, I just want to go on record and say thank you ever so much for doing today and for doing the interview. I think it's been really insightful. You've certainly touched on some hard stuff that I can imagine would be tough to talk about, and it takes a brave person to do so. So I just want to say thank you very much for the interview today, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you. Thanks very much for your time, Alex. Great.
No, thanks, George. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. Cheers.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, Alex.
Another big thanks to George for opening up and telling his story so candidly. It's good to hear how he's got over his problems and is now helping others to do the same. I think the main thing to come out of this conversation is that people need to talk and not to be ashamed, which I know is the hardest thing to do when you're in the bubble of a gambling problem. You feel like you're the only person who knows the true extent of the problem, and you feel like you're the only one able to get yourself out the hole. Having been through the experience, I can honestly say talking helped me the most. As they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. What worries me is the impact a gambling addiction can have on others around you. In George's case, he lost a relationship and had to move out the family home. So I'm interested in finding out what it's like being the partner of someone who suffered from gambling problems. Let's find out in episode 3.